I've completely tamed that arrogant noble lady. Now, she not only hangs on my every word, but she's even changed her arrogant and domineering ways, becoming humble and polite. When we first met, she tried to humiliate me. She deliberately stuck out her foot, demanding I perform a kissing rite. But the next thing she knew, I'd slapped her to the ground. But surprisingly, not only was she not angry, she even developed some strange feelings for me. It was all because I'm not only exceptionally handsome, but I also possess immense magical talent. And in the eyes of the nobility, those two things are the very definition of being high class. That's why I was specially hired to be this arrogant young lady's tutor. But true to her arrogant and domineering nature, the moment we met, she ordered me to kiss her filthy feet. I wasn't about to put up with that, so I slapped her right across the face. She had no idea that for someone like me, who grew up in the slums, I know all too well that if you don't fight back, you'll have everything taken from you, right down to your food. Back in the slums, there was this eccentric old man. He went around boasting that he was a great magician. Even though he was only a 1-star, it was thanks to him that I learned magic. His reason for teaching me was quite simple. He just felt that, as a magician, he needed a follower. A year went by quickly. The old man was astonished to discover I'd actually mastered how to control mana. He watched as my eyes snapped open, and an azure magic arrow shot out, striking a distant tree with perfect accuracy. The old man stared at the scene, finding it absolutely incredible. He never thought that in just 1 year, I would reach the same level as him. That night, he got completely hammered. He told me that some noble prodigies become 3-star mages by the time they reach adulthood. That's a level that people from our humble background could never hope to reach, even in an entire lifetime. Because on top of their natural talent, the nobles have a virtual monopoly on all the magic books. So no matter how hard an ordinary person works, they'll always be defeated by bloodline. That night felt exceptionally long. The old man, who was usually full of boasts, became very somber. When I got home the next day, I found that the old man was gone. His body was covered in injuries. At first, I thought he'd gotten into a fight with someone and was beaten up. It was only later that I heard the truth. He had been caught by the guards while trying to steal a 2-star magic book. That's what led to the tragedy. But no one could understand why an old man with no ambition whatsoever would try to steal a 2-star magic book he couldn't even use. Although the old man always stressed the importance of bloodline, as a transmigrator, I had a system to help me. In the 4 years since the old man's death, I became the youngest mercenary in the region. During that time, a noble with the power of a 3-star mage took me under her wing. She even took me on as her disciple, teaching me how to use magic. This kid was born with an immense amount of mana, and thanks to his extensive combat experience, his control over it is incredibly stable. Just then, Katya suddenly felt a powerful surge of mana erupting from me. The other mercenaries in the tavern heard a loud bang and, thinking they were under attack, immediately readied themselves for a fight. I just stared at my hands in a daze. Had I become a 2-star mage? Before I could even process it, Katya was dragging me outside, warning me not to say a single word. As we were leaving, we saw mercenaries searching all over the place. We didn't stop until we reached a deserted alley. Katya turned to me, her face etched with worry, and warned me. The nobles are extremely sensitive about their privileges, and in their eyes, magic is the greatest one of all. And what you just used were 6 2-star, mind-type spells. If other nobles find out that you've become a 2-star mage at such a young age, they probably won't let you off easily. A year after that, Katya left as well. The patriarch of an elf clan had invited her to become his daughter's private tutor. It was a family that even the Grand Duke of the capital respected, so it was an offer Katya couldn't refuse. Before she left, she gave me a 2-star magic book. By now, my mastery of magic is quite well-rounded. My summoning magic is enough to handle any kind of crisis. Later, the tavern owner told me he'd found a cushy gig for me. This mission comes from Grand Duke Duplan. You should know what that means. But I'm very confused. Why would such a powerful family hire us? You idiot, is that really what we should be focused on right now? Don't you get it? This is the Duplan family, they're as rich as a kingdom. If we can just establish a connection with them through this mission, we could get a steady stream of jobs from now on. So what is it they actually want us to do? Well, nothing special. They just want us to clear out any monsters on the border of the Grand Duke's territory, that's all. But the more I heard, the more something felt wrong. A family like the Duplans. They must have powerful knights and mages of their own. Why would they hire ordinary mercenaries to clear out monsters? So, I turned to leave, intending to reject the mission. But the tavern owner saw me and started to panic. He said, they specified that the person they're looking for must be a mage. That's why I went out of my way to call you over. But hearing that only made me more suspicious. Why insist on a mage just to kill a few monsters? Regardless, I didn't want to get dragged into unnecessary trouble. Just then, the owner tossed something at me, which I caught casually. Are you sure you want to turn this job down? This gold coin isn't the payment. It's the deposit. There's a much larger reward when you complete the mission. Staring at the gold coin in my hand, I thought it over one more time. In the end, I agreed to take it. For someone like me, this was a fortune. Soon, he took me to meet the client. However, the coordinator standing beside them thought I was too young. He didn't think I was capable enough to be the mage they needed for this task, until the mysterious woman in the cloak spoke up. Only then did he back down. Soon, we arrived at the Grand Duke Duplin's territory to hunt monsters. Most of them were just a bunch of weak goblins. I wiped them all out in a matter of moments. The 3 people with me were shocked when they saw it. They never expected I could take out that many goblins in such a short amount of time. And the mysterious woman was clearly very satisfied with the result. Later, when I returned to the tavern, Perrin, another mercenary, came roaring at me. No matter how lowly we commoners are, we should never become lapdogs for the nobility. Do you even know what the deposit for this job is? How much did they pay this kid to sell his pride to the nobles? The owner just silently held up one finger. A single silver coin? But the owner just shook his head with a smug look. Seeing this, Perrin's eyes lit up. You mean 1 gold coin? She ended up drinking until she was completely wasted, muttering about how she wanted a job like that, too. Afterwards, the owner asked me how the mission was going. I told him it was nothing special. I just killed a few goblins, that's all. I'll probably be able to wrap up the whole mission pretty soon. But those 3 people are really strange. First, there's the maid who claims she's a dishwasher. Her hands are so smooth. She's clearly not someone who does manual labor. And then there's that coordinator, who's obviously a man of high rank. But he kept looking to the mysterious woman for cues. At this point, the owner gave me a serious reminder. We're mercenaries. We don't need to go digging into our clients' hidden identities. For us, it's about finishing the job and getting paid. That's it. After he said that, I didn't push the matter any further. Because he was right. Out here in the wilderness, the most important thing is making a living. Nothing else matters. By the next day, the monsters in the area had all been cleared out by me. For my efforts, I received the final payment of 2 gold coins. Young man, I am very satisfied with your performance. I wonder, would you be willing to accept a new request? And this time, not only is it safe, but the reward is 15 gold coins. Hearing this, both the owner and I were stunned. We both realized that the monster clearing job was just a test. This new mission was their true objective. A short time later, we arrived at the Duplan family mansion. Before we go inside, I must introduce myself properly. I am, in fact, the head butler of the Duplan family. I apologize for concealing my identity earlier. Hearing this, the owner quickly bowed to them. Because these were powerful people he could not afford to offend. I, too, was a bit surprised. I'd already sensed this group of people was far from ordinary, but I never imagined their true identities were even more incredible than I thought. Then, the mysterious woman slowly took off her cloak. I am the eldest daughter of this house, Eileen Duplan. Next, I would like to appoint you as my younger sister Tila's magic tutor. Just then, the second son of the Duplan family stormed into his father's room. Reg, how many times have I told you? You must remain calm and composed in your dealings to be worthy of our family's honor. Father, the one who truly needs to calm down isn't me. It's that lunatic, Tila. She's getting more and more out of hand. She even laid a hand on my maid. Last month alone, more than 10 servants quit because of her. If this continues, she'll turn the entire household upside down. Seeing the situation escalating, the eldest son, Varian, quickly stepped forward to intervene. That's enough, Reg. Father and I are discussing important matters. Father will make his own decision about the things you've mentioned. But Reg clearly wasn't willing to let it go. It's time we got rid of that useless Tila. After all, we still have Eileen, don't we? I had the butler look into a convent earlier. Why don't we let Tila spend the rest of her life there? It would be a blessing for both her and the family. Upon hearing this, his father suddenly grabbed Reg by the hair and slammed his head hard onto the desk. Let me remind you one last time. These matters are not for you to decide. And as for me at that moment, I had already entered the castle under Eileen's guidance, and I keenly sensed that the atmosphere here was not normal. And the source of it all pointed to the student I was about to teach, Tila. Soon, Eileen and I arrived at the family head's room. Father, this is the mage I brought from Ebestain. He will be responsible for teaching Tila from now on. The family head, while handling his affairs, simply replied that he understood. He seemed completely uninterested in the matter. But just as we were about to leave, he suddenly called out. He asked me to stay behind to speak with him alone. You are only 16 years old. Can you command magic to some extent? To this, I replied that I could use a little one-star magic. But after hearing my words, the family head said seriously, there's no need to lie in front of me. Excessive humility is not a virtue. Hearing this, I didn't argue but instead offered him my apology. After all, as a 5-star mage, he had clearly seen through my true abilities. Afterward, I went to Tila's room. When she learned of my arrival, she didn't turn to face me. Instead, she told me to come closer. But as I slowly walked towards her, a cold smirk appeared on her lips. The next moment, a bucket of water was thrown in my face. Tila's face was full of arrogance as she said, "I thought a sewer rat had scurried in. You must be that mercenary the head butler mentioned. With your lowly status, what makes you think you're worthy of being my teacher?" Then, she grabbed a stool and stood on it. She noticed that my gaze remained neither servile nor overbearing. Seeing this, her expression grew even uglier. And so, from her high perch, she kicked me. Next, she took off her shoe and stuck out her foot. "A lowly commoner like you is only fit to lick my feet." But in the next moment, I slapped her to the ground. Stunned, she touched her stinging cheek. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. She couldn't possibly imagine that someone in this world would actually dare to slap her face. "Don't make me say it again. Get up, now." After a moment of shock, she shot up to retaliate. "Don't you know I'm the daughter of the Grand Duke Duplan? How dare someone like you hit me?" However, before she could finish, another slap landed across her face. At this, Tila roared and started screaming. Soon, the head butler and the maids rushed in, having heard the commotion. "Do you have any idea what you're doing? How dare you lay a hand on the second miss? If the Grand Duke finds out about this, you're finished." But I calmly and deliberately took a scroll from my coat. "His Grace, the Grand Duke, has granted me full authority. From now on, during Miss Tila's education, I can handle her as I see fit." Seeing this, the head butler dared not say another word, because he recognized that it was indeed a document written by the head of the house. Meanwhile, Tila, standing to the side, was already stunned speechless. To think that I would have to take orders from a lowly commoner. Not long after, Varian, having heard his sister was beaten, came looking for me. "You shameless mercenary, who gave you the nerve to dare lay a hand on my dear sister?" Faced with the accusation from the eldest son of the Duplan family, I responded coldly. "I have the Duke's permission." The second son, Reg, who was standing nearby, rushed forward to intervene. But Varian clearly wasn't going to let it go so easily, demanding that I follow him somewhere. "You did a good job, kid. That girl Tila really needed to be taught a lesson. But don't worry too much. Varian isn't as impulsive as he seems." Afterward, I followed Varian to a strange room, filled with dolls and oil paintings. This used to be Tila's room. Ever since she moved out of the main house, I've had people keep it just as it was. I was too impulsive earlier. For that, I apologize. I said there was no need to mind it, but asked why he brought me to this room. Varian said he wanted to prove that Tila wasn't a bad person. It's just that at some point, she became overly obsessed with magic. Ever since she realized she couldn't learn it, her personality grew worse and worse. Eventually, she was kicked out of the main house and confined to a nearby building. "I'm begging you, you have to save Tila. Otherwise, she'll be sent to a convent and will have to leave the family for good." But I pointed out that Tila hadn't given up on learning magic, because all these books were her notes on the subject. Later, under the cover of night, I snuck into Tila's room and threw a bucket of cold water right on her. "This is no time to sleep. Now that you're awake, you're coming with me." Then, regardless of whether she agreed, I dragged her straight out of bed. Soon, we arrived in the desolate countryside. "You psycho, what on earth did you bring me here for?" "Relax, I don't plan on teaching you magic. I just wanted to beat up a self-righteous noble out here." Hearing this, Tila couldn't help but feel a surge of fear. After all, this place was too remote. You're about to be abandoned by your family and sent to a convent anyway. If he really did something to her, no one would be here to stop him. No matter what I do to you, no one will believe a word you say. Even if something irreversible were to happen, I could just run away from here. I doubt the Duplan family would bother to pursue me. After all, I'd be solving a big problem for them. Hearing this, a panicked Tila ran towards the forest. "This lunatic is going to kill me. If I can just get into the forest, I can shake him off and get back to the estate." But before she could think any further, she felt a scorching heat from behind her. Looking closely, she saw a ball of fire forming in my hand. At the sight, Tila's eyes filled with shock. Fireball is a 2-star level spell. That guy is about the same age as me. How could he possibly be a 2-star mage? The next moment, the fireball shot rapidly toward her. She had just dropped to the ground to dodge when she saw the fireball explode violently nearby. Seeing this, she threw all caution to the wind, focused only on escaping this madman. But suddenly, she tripped on a branch and fell to the ground. Before she could recover from the pain, she saw a magic arrow land right in front of her. "I'm surprised. For someone who's locked in her room all day, you're a pretty fast runner." At this point, Tila was in no state to argue. she scrambled deeper into the forest. As I looked at the forest before me, I felt a sense of familiarity. I'd seen this forest before in her paintings. It must be a place she's been running around in since she was a child. It's possible she never even realized it herself. She was sensing mana through the forest and channeling it onto the canvas. Before I could think anymore, I felt a sense of danger. Looking closely, I realized Tila hadn't actually fled. She was hiding, waiting for a chance to ambush me. But I simply drew my sword and, with a casual swing, sliced the rock in her hand in half. I admit, you're pretty clever. Knowing you couldn't get away, you chose to fight back. But you underestimated the power gap between us. Now you don't even have the strength to run. Do you have any last words? Hearing this, Tila couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. Do you think I'm going to grovel, apologize, and beg for your forgiveness? If you're going to make a move, then get on with it. Why are you so obsessed with bloodlines and fixated on magic? Hearing my words, Tila couldn't help but freeze. Her voice was tinged with loneliness and resentment. What else do I have left besides my bloodline? Every other noble can use magic. So why can't I? No matter how hard I try, it's still useless. If I lose even my noble bloodline, then I'll truly have nothing left. After she finished speaking, I raised the sword in my hand. As I swung it, she squeezed her eyes shut in terror. But to her surprise, she wasn't hurt. Countless ice shards had formed around her, blocking the sword's edge. She stared at her hands, stunned. Did I just use magic? Seeing her reaction, I bowed in apology. That wasn't exactly magic, just a manifestation of your magical power. But in the end, you did it. Hearing this, the heavy burden in Tila's heart was finally lifted, and she began to cry her eyes out without restraint. Only after she'd cried it all out did I begin to explain. Magic can be broadly divided into two major schools, wild and structured. At their core, all schools of magic are almost identical. But when it comes to understanding and mastering them, there are vast differences. You were meant to learn magic through the wild school. Trying to use the structured school of the nobles was bound to have adverse effects. At that, Tila asked me how I knew she belonged to the wild school. I told her I had seen her paintings. I could feel the flow of mana through nature in them. Afterwards, I bandaged the wound on her ankle. You should be able to walk normally now. Just then, Tila suddenly called out to stop me. She had a bashful yet proud look on her face as she stammered out an apology. The next day, Tila tried to use magic, but failed. Still, she had finally taken the first step. From now on, I just have to study hard with that man. Just as she opened her door to go find me, she accidentally startled the maid by the door, who panicked and spilled water on her dress. Seeing this, the maid apologized over and over in terror. After all, given Tila's old temper, anyone who angered her would never get off easy. But to her surprise, this time Tila seemed completely unbothered, and simply told her to be more careful next time. Hearing this, the maid thought she must have misheard. That's strange, what in the world happened to her? She actually walked away without hitting me. Meanwhile, I was sleeping soundly. When I was woken by a loud knocking, I opened the door to find Tila with her hands on her hips. Hurry up and teach me how to control my manifested magical power. I tried it myself, but nothing happened. In response, she saw me slam the door in her face. Come back this afternoon. You wore me out last night, I'm exhausted. Hearing this, the butler's face went pale with shock. What in the world happened last night? Looking at her sitting on the bed, hugging her knees and pouting. I told her that pouting wouldn't do any good. It's time for your lesson. At that, Tila retorted fiercely, I'm not pouting, I'm angry. But the moment our eyes met, for some reason, a strange sense of fear welled up inside her. Fine, I was pouting. Now, even though you can manifest your magical power, that doesn't mean you can use it however you want. If you do, it will only backfire. Hearing my words, Tila reluctantly got off the bed. Alright, whatever you say, you old-fashioned magic teacher. Since you think I'm so old-fashioned, then maybe I should be like I was that night. And teach you something that isn't old-fashioned at all. Hearing this, Tila couldn't help but shudder. She quickly said there was no need for that. Sometimes, being old-fashioned is actually a very good thing. After that, I began teaching Tila how to practice manifesting her magic. Once she becomes proficient enough, you'll quickly be able to learn some simple one-star spells. Besides, you have the blood of the Duplan family, so your talent is far greater than that of an ordinary person. Hearing me praise her, Tila's ears twitched with delight, and a shy, girlish expression inexplicably appeared on her face. So, you're saying I'm talented? That's right. The fact that you were able to conjure an ice wall the moment your magic manifested that night is proof enough of your extraordinary talent. Hearing this, Tila shyly fiddled with the ends of her hair and continued, so, that means I'm a genius, right? No. Having talent and becoming a genius are two different things. No way. They're totally the same thing. Meanwhile, outside the window, Reg, who had witnessed the whole scene, looked extremely displeased. So, he and his older brother, Varian, went to see their father. I heard Tila has manifested her magic. That's truly a relief. Father, I don't think we should cancel sending her to the convent just because she's manifested magic. Stop it, Reg. Tila has worked so hard to get this far. As her older brother, even if you won't praise her, why do you have to kick her when she's down? But Reg didn't respond and continued speaking. You all should remember everything she's done before. Just because she's made a little bit of progress, does that erase all the terrible things she's done? Hearing this, the head of the house fell into a long silence. As for me, on the other hand, although I was relieved that Tila was finally studying seriously, she now wants to stick to me at all times. I can't even get away if I try to hide. Even if I run off to the middle of nowhere, she'll find me. Why are you trying to avoid me? From now on, you are to stay within my line of sight, without fail. Otherwise, I'll go tattle to father, telling him you're slacking off and not teaching me properly. Not long after, the eldest son, Varian, found me and asked how Tila was doing recently. I told him that she's made great progress, and that it's only a matter of time before she becomes a one-star mage. Hearing this, Varian's expression relaxed considerably. Oh, by the way, let me give you a heads up. My mother is returning next week, and she has always been very particular about the gap between nobles and commoners. If she finds out that you're Tila's magic tutor, she'll probably cause trouble for you. Alright, I'll keep that in mind. Is that the only reason you came to see me? Hearing my words, Varian suddenly fell silent. It was obvious this wasn't his real reason for coming. I am the next head of the Duplan family. It would be nice if everyone's thoughts and values were the same. But that's not the case. Watching him lecture me with these grand principles, I decided to just cut him off and ask what he really wanted to say. At my words, Varian's movements suddenly stiffened. When he turned his head, there were already teardrops in the corners of his eyes. Now that Tila's grown up, she won't play with me anymore. As her big brother, I'm just so heartbroken. Looking at this guy with his massive sister complex, I was just speechless. I thought he was a very serious and composed person. Today was a real eye-opener. Please, you have to help me. Make Tila like me again, just like when we were little. And why should I help you? Because Tila is clinging to you all day long now. She must really like you. Then, Varian pulled a bizarre-looking doll from his coat. I learned how to make dolls from the maids. Doesn't it look exactly like Tila? Can you feel my love for her as her older brother? Seeing this, I was silent for a long while before finally saying, Varian, are you sure you're not trying to curse Tila? Not long after, Tila's and the other's mother summoned me. I've heard that an excellent magic tutor has been found. May I ask which family you hail from? I wish to express my gratitude to them. I don't belong to any family, because I am merely a commoner. After hearing my words, her face instantly filled with shock and anger. Immediately after, she stormed off to find Duke Duplan. That person is a mere commoner. Why is he Tila's teacher? Tila is our most beloved, precious daughter. At her words, the Duke could only reply helplessly. I don't typically appoint commoners myself, but when it came to every single mage of noble birth, they all refused to teach Tila. Besides, it was our eldest daughter, Eileen, who recommended him. Aside from his status, he truly is a perfect magic tutor. But even so, this is unacceptable. Making a commoner Tila's tutor? Won't that just make her the laughingstock of high society? Just then, Reg walked in, saying that if the commoner truly possessed the necessary qualities, none of this would be a major issue. Father, I want to test this man. Please allow me to have a magic duel with him. Enough, Reg, you're no match for him. He is a true mage, and a very powerful one at that. Hearing this, Reg fell silent for a long moment. He never expected his father to have such a high opinion of the commoner's abilities. Since that's the case, then I'll test Tila. If he's truly an excellent magic tutor, then Tila, under his guidance, must have made incredible progress. So let me be the one to verify his teaching. After hearing this, the head of the house thought for a moment and finally agreed. And Varian, upon learning the news, quickly went to find Reg. He confronted him, demanding to know why he would do such a thing. Brother, do you really believe that Tila has changed? I haven't forgotten the things she's done. Even so, she's our sister. As her family, we're supposed to protect her. But Reg became extremely agitated at his words. That's the exact reason Tila ended up this way. No matter how horrible her actions were, you all forgave her for no reason. If we let her enter high society like this, our Duplan family will be finished. Meanwhile, Tila, who had heard the news, came rushing to find me. She handed me the dueling notice and said, if I lose this upcoming magic duel, you'll be fired. I know, Reg is already an experienced one-star mage. It's going to be very difficult for you to win. Is that all you have to say? If I lose, I won't be able to see you again. A week later, the day of the duel arrived. The head of the house noticed I wasn't nervous at all, but seemed remarkably confident. To think he has such courage in this situation, it seems he really isn't a talent we should let go of. At that moment, Reg strode menacingly onto the dueling platform. Tila, today, I'm going to destroy you. I'll make you pay for everything you've done. But Tila walked out without a trace of fear. You see, a week ago, after she told me about the duel, I had said that her magic training was finally on the right track. And that even if she lost and I had to leave, it wouldn't affect her progress too much. But upon hearing this, Tila burst into tears. I know I'm not a good student. But I still want to keep learning magic from you. I don't want anyone else as my teacher. Hearing this, I was silent for a long while before speaking seriously. I may not know the rules of these duels between you nobles, but I can teach you how to win. Tell me again, do you truly want to win? At that, Tila couldn't help but remember the cold taunts and ridicule from everyone when she couldn't use magic. Instantly, her eyes became incredibly determined. Yes, I want to win. I'll win, no matter the cost. Soon after, the head butler announced the rules of the duel. The first person to trigger their opponent's protective magic array loses. It was a small, wearable magical device. It could nullify an opponent's magic upon taking a severe hit. Seeing it, I thought to myself, so battles between nobles are this extravagant. I mean, this magical device was incredibly expensive, and it only lasted for a mere 10 minutes. On the dueling platform, Reg chanted a complex, obscure spell, and a mass of green magic quickly coalesced in his hand. With a flick of his wrist, it transformed into a blade of wind, shooting straight for Tila. But faced with such powerful magic, Tila showed no fear. She simply shifted to the side and dodged it with ease. Seeing this, Reg felt utterly humiliated. He redirected his wind blades and attacked once more. But this time, an ice wall appeared and blocked his attack. That girl didn't even use a spell. She blocked my wind blades just by manifesting her mana, but if she thinks she can win with cheap tricks like this, she's dreaming. Instantly, 3 spheres of mana formed in his hands. But facing such overwhelming firepower, Tila showed no fear. That's because we had already planned our strategy. A mercenary's fighting style is completely different from a noble's. We don't see fairness as a virtue. Our only goal is victory. If you want to win, you have to be willing to do whatever it takes. And so, in the battle that followed, Tila used every trick she could to dodge and weave, trying to wear down Reg's mana. But she was caught off guard when a wind blade came at her from behind. With a loud explosion, the dueling platform was engulfed in a cloud of dust. Seeing this, the Duchess and the audience couldn't help but cry out. She quickly turned to the Grand Steward and yelled, "Can't you see that Tila is hurt? Hurry up and stop the duel." But the Grand Duke Duplan remained perfectly calm. "Sit down. The duel isn't over yet. Why are you stopping me?" Tila was clearly hit by Reg's spell just now. But the Grand Duke pointed out that the magic protection item hadn't activated. Then, he glanced over to where I was standing. He hadn't even blinked. Could it be that he knew this would happen? Meanwhile, on the platform, Reg watched as the dust began to settle. He couldn't find any sign of Tila. Suddenly, to his surprise, he heard a faint noise coming from beneath the ground. Before he could react, an ice spike shot up from the ground. Fortunately, he managed to dodge it just in time. That Tila she's hiding underneath the dueling platform. Doesn't leaving the stage count as a loss? But the Grand Steward simply shook his head. Apparently, there was no rule forbidding it, because such dirty tricks had never been used in a duel between nobles. For the rest of the fight, Reg could do nothing but frantically dodge. He had completely lost the upper hand. That's when he noticed something familiar about the look in Tila's eyes. Why does she have the exact same look as that guy? He immediately whipped his head around to look at me. There's no way Tila could have come up with this strategy on her own. It must have been his plan. Meanwhile, Tila, hidden beneath the stage, used the visual cover to her advantage. Every time Reg started gathering mana for an attack, she could detect the faint flow, pinpointing his location to launch her own assault. This can't go on. I have to find a way to deal with this. Just then, he noticed a tall flagpole on the dueling platform. Without a second thought, he climbed to the top. Suddenly, Tila realized she couldn't sense Reg's mana at all. But even though Reg had managed to hide from her senses, he couldn't cast any spells from up there. So, he channeled his mana and attacked the base of the flagpole instead. The moment the giant flagpole toppled over, it completely destroyed the entire dueling platform. Now you have nowhere left to hide. Victory is mine. But Reg never imagined that Tila would actually engage him in close quarters combat. She landed a flying kick right in his chest. Then, before he could even recover, she grabbed a handful of sand and threw it in his face. But Tila didn't press her advantage. Instead, she backed away. Looks like her mana has run out. Does she really think she can beat me with these cheap tricks? But Tila's eyes were as determined as ever. She paid no mind to the gash on her forehead. she simply wiped the blood away so it wouldn't block her vision. You can think of magic as a painting, and your mana is the brush and paint. Try to paint in the way that's most familiar to you, and you'll be able to cast true magic. Following my instructions, Tila began to channel her mana. Her fingertips moved gracefully, as if she were painting. Soon, a magic arrow materialized beside her. Look, that Tila girl has cast a 1-star spell. Hearing this, Reg felt the pressure mount. After all, he was only a 1-star mage himself. He couldn't believe that Tila, after being taught by that man for just a short time, had already reached the same level as him. But the advantage is still mine. Even if we're both using 1-star magic, her proficiency and power can't compare to mine. As long as I can land the first hit, I'm guaranteed to win. Then, both of them cast their magic almost simultaneously, and a loud explosion instantly ripped through the air. The Duchess on the platform couldn't help but gasp. When she could finally see clearly, she saw that one of their magic items had been activated. Looking at the ice magic arrow that was just inches away, Reg also felt his heart pound in fear. He had almost been the one to lose. Tila, on the other hand, stood there in a daze for a long time. Finally, she couldn't hold it in anymore and burst into tears. She had clearly worked so hard, even casting aside her noble dignity, to fight without holding anything back. But in the end, she still lost the duel. Seeing this, I felt a bit disappointed myself. But this wasn't really Tila's fault. After all, she had only just awakened her magic a short time ago, while her brother, Reg, was an experienced 1-star magician. The fact that she could fight to this point already made me very proud. At that moment, the Duke and the others in the stands were also completely stunned. The Duchess, in particular, looked exceptionally furious. She believed Tila's fighting style was a disgrace to the nobility and went on, accusing me of corrupting Tila. But the Duke remained silent, his eyes fixed on his daughter on the dueling platform. He couldn't help but be reminded of his own youth. Back then, a very important person had told him that he had eyes full of ambition. And now, the Duke saw that although his daughter was crying, her gaze was much sharper than it had ever been before. Just then, numerous maids rushed over, wanting to treat her injuries. But Tila paid no mind to her wounds, and instead walked straight off the dueling platform. Reg watched his sister walk past him. He felt that he might have gone a bit too far this time. And he realized that this sister of his wasn't as spoiled and unruly as she used to be. After she stepped off the platform, the maids tried to escort Tila back to her room, assuming she was too ashamed of losing to stay. But Tila didn't answer them and walked directly over to me. She struggled to hold back her tears, but when she was standing in front of me, she couldn't stop them any longer. She apologized to me over and over. "I'm sorry, it's all my fault. If I had just tried a little harder, maybe I could have won." I stood up and comforted her. "It's okay to lose. The important thing is to remember today's experience and use it to become even stronger." Tila didn't expect me to comfort her instead of blaming her. She burst into tears, sobbing uncontrollably, as if all the grievances she had suffered were being released in that single moment. Just then, the Duchess came rushing over. She reached out and gently wiped the tears from Tila's eyes. "My darling daughter, you've worked so hard. It's all over now. Let's go back and get your injuries treated, okay?" Comforted by her mother, Tila finally agreed to go back for treatment. Seeing this, I was about to leave as well. But I was stopped by the furious Duchess. "You shameless fiend. Do you really think you're so special just because you know a little magic? How dare you corrupt my precious daughter?" Then, she slapped me right across the face. "Is teaching dirty tricks the only thing you know? Tila is a lady of our ducal house. How could you teach her such filthy, low-class tactics?" She raised her hand for another slap, but then she saw the Duke walking toward them. "Darling, you saw how outrageous this man was, didn't you? He has completely corrupted our little girl. That duel just now wasn't proper magic training at all. It completely lacked any noble grace." But before she could finish, the Duke slapped her across the face. "You fool, can you not see how ignorant and stupid you are?" The Duchess's face was a mask of disbelief. She couldn't understand why the Duke would punish her in public for a mere commoner. "You're right, he is indeed a commoner of low status. But he is also our daughter's teacher. What parent in the world would treat their child's teacher the way you do?" Then, the Duke formally apologized to me, hoping I would forgive her ignorance. After all, everyone has a different way of doting on their child. She has always spoiled Tila too much. "I have some other matters to discuss with you in private. Follow me to my study." But as she watched us leave, the Duchess couldn't take her eyes off our backs for a long time. Her gaze toward me was filled with hatred. After all, in her daily life as a Duchess, she was worshipped wherever she went. But this commoner's gaze was always neither servile nor arrogant. He had absolutely no awareness of how one should act before a noble. And now, because of him, she had been slapped by the Duke in public. So, she secretly resolved to get her revenge. At that moment, the Duke was contemplating what kind of reward to give me. You have taught my young daughter so exceptionally well. As the head of this family, it is only right that I give you the reward you deserve. And the highest level privy Reggie a commoner was allowed to possess was 3-star magic. So, he solemnly asked if I wanted to learn 3-star magic. Hearing this, I couldn't help but be impressed. As expected of a 5-star archmage who stands at the pinnacle of the world, he saw my intentions with a single glance. After all, 3-star magic is the most solid boundary between nobles and commoners. They monopolize the 3-star magic books, making it impossible for commoners to become 3-star magicians. So, I didn't refuse and accepted directly. After discussing the reward, the Duke changed the subject. Although you have succeeded in teaching Tila 1-star magic, that is still not enough. For her to establish herself in noble social circles, the kingdom has many teachers who could guide Lady Tila. Besides, she is taking it seriously now. I'm sure she'll be able to impress everyone very soon. Hearing this, the Duke stated that what his daughter needs is not a teacher, but a master. He paused for a moment, then continued. I know that your ambition is immense. Despite being a commoner, you possess lofty aspirations you aren't even supposed to dream of. To the nobility, this is undoubtedly a great blasphemy. It is only because it is you that I have not pursued this matter. After hearing the Duke's words, I didn't refute them, because I was truly unwilling to remain beneath the nobles. Compared to those nobles, I possess far greater magical talent. I reached the peak of 2-star magic a long time ago. All I lack is a 3-star magic book to reach the 3rd star. And even though the Duke's young master is much older than me, he is currently only at the peak of the 1st star. I know you are an ambitious man, but I still hope you will teach Tila for as long as you possibly can. She came before me, her face full of pride. I'm not the Tila I was before. From now on, please call me a 1-star magician. I replied that although she had only cast a 1-star spell once, she could indeed call herself a magician. After hearing my words, Tila was clearly not satisfied. You're the master, can't you praise me a little more? Your apprentice has made so much progress. Aren't you happy? But I didn't respond directly. It seems you've recovered well these past 3 days. You were crying so hard back then. I thought you'd be upset for a while longer. It seems your spirits are quite high now. Hearing this, Tila's face flushed red as she retorted, who said I was crying? Some sand just happened to blow into my eyes, that's why a few tears fell, that's all. Besides, why didn't father tell me the truth sooner? I thought you had already been kicked out. After all, I lost the duel that was supposed to decide whether you stayed or left. Then, we resumed our lesson. I told her that at her current rate of progress, she would probably learn other 1-star spells very soon. When Tila heard me praise her, the smile on her face couldn't help but brighten. Then, with a look of anticipation, she asked me what magic we would be learning next. Magic arrow can be used directly without an incantation. There's also the wind blade that your older brother, Reg, uses. She looked pretty strong, too. Just as she was rambling on about all that magic, I told her that we were going to learn mana dissipation. Hearing this, Tila was a little disappointed. She had already awakened her mana, so why not learn magic directly? Why practice the effects of mana dissipation instead? Seeing her reaction, I thought I was going to have to explain myself again. But to my surprise, before I could even open my mouth, Tila agreed. Although she was a bit disappointed, she was still willing to listen to me. Whatever you say, I guess. And here I thought we were going to learn magic. I got all excited for nothing. Just then, she noticed that I was looking at her with a strange expression. Why are you looking at me like that? Is there something on my face? I just find it too unrealistic that you're being so obedient. Are you sure you didn't hit your head in our last duel? After hearing what I said, Tila turned her head away in a huff. What kind of person do you take me for? I've been listening to you from the very beginning. Seeing this, I decided to meticulously list her misdeeds from when we first met. You threw water on me twice. And you even tried to force me to kiss your stinky feet. Hearing this, Tila froze in embarrassment. Oh, my, the weather is so nice today. It looks like a perfect day to practice mana dissipation. Watching her awkward behavior now, I felt quite relieved. She had changed a lot for the better since we first met. After that, we practiced until late into the night before stopping. Tila lay on the ground, panting, as if she didn't have an ounce of strength left. I heard from those maids of yours that you're going to be busy for a while. Yeah, starting next week, I have to take etiquette lessons. Just thinking about it gives me a headache. Hearing this, I comforted her, saying it was a good thing. Not only have you learned 1-star magic now, you're also about to receive a true noble's education. This proves your family has no intention of giving up on you. But Tila couldn't understand why she had to learn noble etiquette. Just the basics. Included dozens of subjects like Faux-Regan languages, geography, and piano. How on earth did my sister Eileen ever endure it all? It's precisely because she endured it all that she's known as the flower of the kingdom, and became a central figure in the nobles' social circles. Then, I asked Tila, does anyone still want to get me fired? She said that although the Duke had acknowledged me, the Duchess was not one to give up so easily. Actually, I can understand why Mother is doing this. Because studying with you will lead me further and further away from a noble's refinement. She's probably afraid I'll become a mercenary or something, like you. Getting Mother to give up now probably won't be easy. But I told her it actually wasn't that difficult. We just had to avoid giving her any excuses. Some time passed, and the Duchess still wore a worried expression. My poor Tila, how did she end up with such a barbaric magic tutor? He isn't secretly teaching Tila the ways of a mercenary, is he? The thought of Tila potentially turning into a barbarian gave her a headache. So what if that person has some talent? What can a low-born commoner possibly teach Tila? Just then, the Duchess happened to run into her daughter, Tila. She immediately opened her arms, waiting for a hug. Even if everyone says you're ill-mannered. In my eyes, you are the most adorable thing in the world. But after waiting for a long time, Tila did not run into her embrace. Instead, Tila gracefully curtsied and greeted her. Seeing this, the Duchess was stunned and stood frozen on the spot. Mother, I was unable to greet you while I was recovering. Although there is much I wish to say to you, I have a piano lesson today, so I must take my leave. Looking at her poised and well-behaved youngest daughter, she had the strange illusion that her eldest daughter was standing before her. She confessed. The noble young lady finally couldn't hold back her feelings of love. However, what she didn't expect was that the young ladies from several other families had also developed a great interest in me. As it turned out, Tila's sister had unexpectedly started talking about me during a tea party she was holding with a group of nobles. I was so worried when I heard you went to that chaotic commoners district. I'm just glad you came back safe and sound. In response, Eileen explained that her sister, Tila, needed a magic tutor, and she happened to meet an exceptionally talented young man there. Hearing this, Alfie, though she appeared calm on the surface, couldn't help but feel incredibly curious deep down. Just how incredible could that boy from the commoners district be for Eileen to personally ask him to be her sister's magic tutor? Beside her, Dennis also became interested. Hasn't Tila always been unable to use magic? Many famous noble magicians from near and far were completely at a loss with her. Can that boy really help your sister? At this question, Eileen's face broke into a wide smile. She made no effort to hide her praise for me. Under that young man's instruction, not only can Tila now use one-star magic, but she also came close to defeating her older brother, Reg. Most importantly, she's no longer arrogant and rude. She's transformed into a proper, regent lady. Even I am starting to feel a great deal of pressure from her. Hearing this, Dennis verbally congratulated her on finding an excellent magic tutor, but inside, his mind was racing. He had to find out that boy's background immediately, because Tila's behavior had been so atrocious before. The Duplan family had always avoided discussing her, but now, Eileen was singing his praises endlessly. And Eileen, completely unaware of their scheming thoughts, unintentionally revealed my background. Although that young man is from a humble background, he is extremely capable. And he's a mercenary from the Belton region. His practical combat skills are absolutely mind-boggling. Hearing this, both of them were stunned. After all, in the eyes of an ordinary noble, mercenaries were undoubtedly a symbol of violence and rudeness. But Alfie reconsidered. If this person could turn the notoriously awful Tila into a poised and polite noble lady, and even teach her how to use magic, then it seems he's worth meeting, even if he is a mercenary. So, she asked what my name was. Eileen couldn't help but be a little curious as to why she was asking. In response, Alfie said, since that young man is Tila's teacher, he's bound to become quite famous in the future. I'd like to know his name ahead of time. After hearing Alfie's explanation, Eileen didn't suspect a thing and told her my name. His name is Derek. He's a white-haired young man who looks just like a noble. And at this very moment, Tila was chattering endlessly, praising me to her mother. She said that not only did I teach her magic, but I also knew a great deal about complex noble etiquette. However, the Duchess didn't acknowledge my contribution. Tila, for you to have learned these things on your own is truly admirable. Mother, I didn't learn them on my own. Although most of it was very difficult, I was only able to do it thanks to Derek. Listening to her youngest daughter praise me constantly made the Duchess, who had always looked down on commoners, grow increasingly agitated. As soon as she left her daughter's room, she could no longer hide the expression on her face. What in the world did that bastard do to my Tila? Why does she bring up his name so often? She immediately decided she could no longer stand by and do nothing. Otherwise, she feared her daughter might genuinely be led astray. So, she decided to get information from the servants to find out Tila's current flaws, so she could pin the blame on me for being a poor teacher. But to her surprise, all the servants said that the current Lady Tila was astonishing. In just a few months, she had become like a completely different person. They even said the current Lady Tila had become a true noble lady. The Duchess, failing to get the answer she wanted, was left grinding her teeth in frustration. Meanwhile, I was completely absorbed, channeling my mana and studying magic. Placed beside me was the 3-star magic book I had previously borrowed from the library. Normally, magic books of this level were strictly controlled by the nobility, which prevented many talented commoners from ever breaking through to become 3-star mages in their entire lifetime. It was for this reason that I, too, was stuck at the peak of 2-star for many years. Fortunately, thanks to Tila's excellent performance, the Duke decided to reward me. He specially allowed me to borrow a 3-star magic book. Suddenly, I sensed someone approaching from behind. I took a closer look and saw it was Tila's older brother, Reg. "Sorry," he said, "am I interrupting your training?" Seeing him, I asked directly if he had come here looking for me for a particular reason. Reg sat down right next to me and said he wanted to talk about Tila. Just then, he noticed that the magic book in my hands was a 3-star tome. When he heard his father had lent it to me, Reg's face was filled with disbelief. After all, while his father valued talent, he always cared about the status gap between nobles and commoners. And a 3-star magic book was the greatest symbol of that divide. Especially since before, when he himself had wanted to challenge me, his father had refused without hesitation, telling Reg not to go looking for trouble. Thinking about this, Reg couldn't help but feel a little impressed. It seemed my talent and strength far surpassed his own. I cut to the chase and asked him what he wanted to say about Tila. Hearing that, Reg looked a bit awkward. He fidgeted for a while before slowly speaking. He asked me what kind of things young girls like these days. I was a little speechless. I never expected the always composed Reg to show this kind of expression. It reminded me of Varian and his sister complex. I couldn't help but think, they really are brothers, aren't they? Even that doting on their sister trait is the same. Meanwhile, Reg continued, completely absorbed, let's say. I mean, hypothetically, if I embroidered a doll that looks just like Tila, would she like it? After hearing him say that, an image popped into my head. The image of the doll Varian had made. I told him decisively, she definitely won't like it. Hearing me say that, Reg was obviously a little embarrassed. He could only laugh awkwardly. Then, we got up and prepared to return to the mansion. On the way, Reg suddenly spoke up. In any case, I'm very grateful to you. The old Tila had completely disappointed me. It was you who helped her become her old, well-behaved self again. And father is actually very happy, too. It's just that, given his position, he doesn't show it easily. Suddenly, Reg stopped walking and looked up at the starry sky. I didn't fulfill my duties as her older brother before. I was so focused on trying to drive her out of the family. But now that Tila has changed, I think it's time for me to change, too. Then, he solemnly thanked me once again. I gave him a slight nod in return. Oh, by the way, he added, Tila's magic feels very special to me. It's not like traditional chanting. It's more like a new kind of magic, almost like she's painting. Hearing this, I couldn't help but be a little surprised. As expected of someone with Duplan family blood, I thought such a subtle difference would be hard for an ordinary person to notice, but I didn't expect him to have seen it. So, I decided to just admit it. The way everyone uses magic is vastly different, but it can basically be divided into 2 major schools, the wild and the regulated. The latter accounts for the vast majority of users. Tila, however, belongs to the extremely rare wild school. Once she reaches a certain milestone in her development, she'll be able to learn on her own. She won't need me to teach her anything anymore, because at that point, any external interference would only become a hindrance to her. Sometime later, Tila suddenly found a bouquet of fresh flowers on her table. I saw how beautifully they were blooming, so I thought I'd arrange them in your hair, Lady Tila. Hearing this, Tila couldn't help but lean in for a sniff. She found the fragrance to be quite unique, so she decided to give the flowers to me later. At that thought, Tila couldn't help but smile to herself. The maid beside her teased, no wonder you look so happy, Lady Tila. It's because you have your magic lesson with Derek today. But just as Tila, full of joy, arrived at my room holding the flowers, she overheard a piece of news that struck her like a bolt from the blue. Tears welled up in her eyes, which were filled with disbelief. Standing in the room were Derek and his older brother, Varian. Tila, you heard me right. There's nothing more I can teach you. So, I plan to leave this place. Tila's magic training is already on the right track. And since she has an extremely rare, wild style, too much interference will only hinder her growth. So, I directly submitted my resignation to the Duke. Upon hearing this, the Duke fell silent for a long time. Then he slowly rose, walked over to the window, and said, it's all thanks to you. That my daughter was able to return to her former, well-behaved self. All these years, I poured all my energy into managing the affairs of my domain. But I failed in my duties as a father. If it weren't for you, I would have been racked with guilt for the rest of my life. After speaking, the Duke asked when I planned to leave, and I explained that the eldest daughter, Lady Eileen, would be arriving at the manor soon. I would be returning to Ebestane, and I planned to travel back with her in her carriage. Hearing this, the Duke said that in that case, I should hand over the library key. I replied that I would immediately return the 3-star magic book I had borrowed, and give the key to the butler. But the Duke said there was no need for that. I could just return the key to him right then. Hearing his words, I couldn't help but look down at the 3-star magic book at my waist. I never expected that just before I left, the Duke would give me something so precious. I immediately bowed to him respectfully. The Duke's family was completely different from the nobles I remembered. They were great nobles with truly excellent character. After I left the Duke's room, I was met by Tila, who had been waiting there for me. Her voice was laced with a mix of resentment and reluctance. "You're always like this. First you show up out of nowhere, and now you're leaving just as suddenly." But after she finished, she couldn't help but say shyly, "Can't you really stay?" Feeling the deep reluctance in Tila's eyes, I was silent for a long time. Then, I slowly walked up to her, bowed, and said, "This separation isn't a final farewell. I'll go back to my life as a mercenary, just like before, and you, Miss Tila, will continue to grow. Once your training is complete, I'll be waiting to see your debut in Ebestane." Tila didn't reply to my words, looking as though she might burst into tears at any moment. "When we meet again, if my skills are even a little better than they are now, perhaps I can even teach you something new." After a moment of silence, Tila finally spoke slowly. "You're so annoying. Everything you say is always so right, that I can't even argue with it." That night, Tila's face was contorted in pain as she slept. In her dream, she once again recalled her life before I arrived. Back then, she was like a joke among the noble circles. Everyone said she was nothing more than her bloodline. They even said someone like her should never have been born, because she had become a disgrace to the Duplan ducal family. She was jolted awake from the nightmare. What's happening? It's been so long since I've had that kind of dream. Could it be that Derek's departure is making me feel so insecure? Just then, hearing the noise, a maid rushed into the room. Suddenly, a bold idea formed in Tila's mind. If I go back to being that arrogant, rude noble lady I used to be, would that be enough to make him stay? Like, if I just slapped the maid. But in the end, she only smiled and responded to the maid, because she didn't want to go back to being the person she once was. Derek would be so disappointed. The next day, I was preparing to leave in Lady Eileen's carriage. Tila and her 2 older brothers came to see me off. She stood off to the side, arms crossed, putting on a show of being angry. Reg and Varian both sincerely told me that if I ever ran into trouble in the future, I absolutely had to contact them. They would do everything in their power to help. Hearing this, I thanked them for their kindness. Then I shifted my gaze to Tila, who had been silent the whole time. She, too, was looking at me quietly. After a long standoff, Tila finally couldn't hold back any longer and spoke up. "Why are you looking at me like that? Did you think I'd cry and beg you not to leave? I'm not a kid who cries and throws tantrums anymore." Hearing that, I couldn't help but let a small smile form on my lips. "It was an honor to be your teacher during this time. Although I can't proudly boast that I am your teacher, I hope you'll remember the magic you learned with me." After hearing my words, Tila couldn't help but laugh. "If you're not going to say it, then I'll have to go around proudly bragging that you're my teacher. You won't be able to live a quiet life anymore, because you're the teacher of the great magician, Tila Duplan." But she saw that I didn't argue, just smiled and watched her. In that moment, Tila almost lost control of her tears, so she quickly turned her head to the side. "You have to protect yourself until we meet again. Don't do anything dangerous." And I reminded her to find a balance between work and rest, and not to overwork herself. Hearing this, Tila proudly declared that she was an adult now. She wasn't a child anymore and could take good care of herself. Hearing those familiar words, I couldn't help but freeze, because I had once said the exact same thing. Back then, my teacher had pulled me into a tight hug. So, I leaned down and gently stroked her hair. "You don't have to pretend to be strong." Hearing this, Tila finally couldn't hold it in, and tears welled up in her eyes. She quickly wiped away her tears, then waved goodbye to me with a bright smile. I returned the farewell and said, "We'll meet again in Ebestane." By now, Tila's face was streaked with tears, but her smile was exceptionally radiant. She shouted back aloud, "Okay." By the time I returned to the tavern where I accept my quests, I found it was as chaotic as always. Perrin was in the middle of beating someone up. When she saw me, she couldn't help but laugh. "Derek, you're finally back.